Behind me is a box from Triton Electric Bikes, and inside is the new CZEM Drill One Electric Dirt Bike. So we're gonna unbox this thing, put it together, and see what it's all about. All right, here she is. This is the Trail 16 model. So this has the 16-inch rear wheel and a 19-inch front. This is in their sand brown color, and this is how it comes on the pallet. So what we're gonna do next is cut the zip ties and some of the packaging and get on with unboxing this thing. All right, so once you get all the packaging and zip ties undone, the next thing you're gonna wanna do is pull this front axle out because it's attached to the pallet. So if you have a buddy to hold the bike, that would be a good option. But what I'm gonna do is actually suspend the bike from the top tube here. I'm gonna attach some straps to the ceiling and just prop this bike up so that when I pull the axle out, the bike will still stay upright. When you remove the front axle from the pallet, it is gonna wanna tip over. So this is just a 6mm Allen key here. You just wanna undo this nut. And you don't want to pull it all the way out, because what you're going to want to do is then hammer lightly, and this is going to be what pops the axle out here. All right, now you can undo the back straps here, pull that guy out, and then you've got your charger, and a couple other little odds and ends down here. Now the bike's free. It's just hanging from that suspended part. You pull the rear wheel out. Get this pallet out of the way. Next steps, before I put the front wheel on, I'm gonna put the handlebars on. So let's get the bubble wrap off of these guys. All right, so just gonna take off the stem bolts here. These are just 5mm Allen bolts. We're just gonna take these off. All right, got that stem cap off. Just gonna put that on the seat for the time being. So everything's already mounted to the bars. You've got your brakes, your power map, start button, and magnet. So all you gotta do is just line up the bars. On Pro Taper, they've got these lines on the handlebars there that'll help you line that up. So just kind of want to get that centered. You can always modify this afterwards, but just want to get them roughly in place and then snug them down. You're going to want to torque these bolts, and the recommended, what does it say on here? 8 Newton meters is what you want to torque these bolts down to, but just for the time being, I'm just going to get them in place, and then we'll get the torque wrench out and torque them down to 8 Newton meters. All right, so to do this properly, you're going to want to have a torque wrench, and on the torque wrench, it's going to have a setting for your Newton meters. So you want to turn this for the stem over to 8 Newton meters, and you want to alternate the bolts that you're tightening down. You want to go one opposite each other. Okay, you can hear that click. That's how you know that you're torquing it down to the right spec. Just alternate so you get them all to click on every corner of the stem, and that way you know that you've got the stem torqued down properly. All right, cool. Once you got the handlebars on, now let's put the wheel on this thing. We've got the axle out and the wheel over here. So the wheel comes with these spacers that are zip tied to the spokes there, so you're going to want to put that in between the hub and the inside of the fork. You want to be careful at this point. These bikes come with a spacer inside of the brake so that you don't want to hit the disc brake while you're doing this, because it will cause the pads to seize together. So you just want to pull this little piece out of the disc brake there, and be sure not to touch the brakes between now and getting that disc brake inside of the pad there. You've got these 2 spacers right here. Those are going to go on the inside, on both sides of the wheel, right inside of the hub, and you're going to fit those on the inside of the fork there. So we'll do one at a time. So this is another reason why I like hoisting it up like this. I can lower it down just a little bit. So that's looking pretty close. All right, so you'll feel that thing push right through, get that axle in there. You can give it a little tap. All right, so once you get the axle through, you're gonna wanna put this nut on and tighten this thing down to 3.5 to 4.5 Newton meters. That's a click. All right, once you got that torque down, next thing you need to do is tighten these pinch bolts. But before you do that, you want to load the suspension. So you want to jump on the fork here. I'm just gonna undo this a little bit, grab a little bit of front brake, and just press down on the forks a couple times to compress it. That'll help center that axle, and then you can go in and tighten those pinch bolts down. So when you're tightening these down, you want to work simultaneously to tighten these down. So what you want to do is just alternate each pinch bolt and tighten them simultaneously until you get them all to your torque spec of 4.5 Newton meters. So the Drill One's got the Manitou Dorado front fork, and it's an air shock, so you need to put some air in it. It comes with 75 PSI from the factory, but you're gonna wanna put more than that in it. You can put up to, what does it say here? 50 to 90 PSI is the range that they want you to work in, but you can put up to 110 PSI. So I'm gonna meet somewhere in the middle. I'll probably go to the 90 mark to start, and we'll see how it feels from there. So what you need is a shock pump, and you just thread this thing on the air side of the fork. And once you get that thing tight, you basically just pump in some air into this thing. All right, so that's 90 PSI. We'll start with that. And this fork also has settings for high speed compression, low speed compression, and rebound. So I usually just go through and dial those in. I put them in the middle. They're usually 20 clicks on either side, so if you can just land in the middle at 10 clicks out, that's in the center, and then you can just modify it from there. So the other thing you want to do is set up your rear shock. You can set your sag and change the preload by loosening this collar or tightening this collar here, and then this shock also has rebound, so you can change your rebound as well. I usually middle that out just like the fork and get a base setting that way. So the bike ships without the battery being connected. You just have to connect these two. Here's one right here, so you just pull this tape off. That's one end of the connection. Pull this guy out, and you just want to put this cover back on. All right, so that about does it for getting the bike put together. I usually just go through any new bike and just make sure that all the bolts are tightened down to spec, especially stuff like your axles and your controls and that type of thing. It's always good just to double check that stuff. But the only thing left to do is charge this thing. These bikes come uncharged, so you've got your box over here that has the charger in it, as well as your little number plate here if you care to put that on. It's got that with some zip ties. But the important piece in here is this charger. So this thing just plugs into 110 volt. There's a port on the right side of the battery, and we'll charge this sucker up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the new CZEM Drill One electric dirt bike. Last year I rode the pre-production model, so I'm excited to see some new changes on this bike, which I'll run through next week in a new video. We'll go test ride them, talk about what's changed, but until then, thanks for watching. See you next week.